traveling through another dimension. A dimension not only of sight and sound, but of mind. A journey into a wondrous land whose boundaries are that of imagination. That's the signpost up ahead. Your next stop, the Twilight Zone.
Okay, so it seems everybody is coming out of their ET closets here, so in the spirit of tradition I shall list the encounters I have had with alien and other unidentified phenomena. As I had explained, my childhood was riddled with odd memories, many of them definitely Twilight Zone worthy, and what was most notable was the fact that the time scale of events did not match my internal clock. A whole day would pass where to me it seemed like only a few hours had passed. When I set out it would be early morning, around 10 or 11 o'clock, but then when things went back towards what seemed like normal, after passing through usually some doorway with strange glowing glyphs along the door frame that would light up and begin to pulsate. Then the inside of the frame would shimmer with a dull glow as the door sometimes would move to the side or it would open from the center, spiraling out into the frame. On the one side would be the world here on Earth, but on the other side of the frame was a completely different place, and even the air would feel cooler and smell different. Many times it could best be described where I went was a completely alternate reality, and it was not always the same. Sometimes I would see these patterns of light that look like this image on the screen with a gradual fade into a bright light. Then as the light faded I would not be where I was standing a minute ago, and my internal clock sensed that more time had passed than I had realized. One thing I remember was the smell in the air. It always smelled like I was somewhere deep underground. You know, the heavy stale musty smell that was thick and had not been circulated with fresh air in decades, or if you ever worked in a hospital you know that heavy sensation the air gets the deeper into the hospital you go. It could be compared to that. Even when I would enter an area that seemed like it was open sky, it still had that heavy scent in the air. It wasn't until after a year of this occurring that I found out the entire scenario was simulated. Everything and everybody I interacted with was a digital holographic image, at least I think. This became obvious when one day, while I was conversing with this centralized computer network's core CPU that had digitized itself into an interactive avatar and called itself Logos, which was an upgraded model of something called the Logos network, and was some old military supercomputer that had been refitted with AI hardware that could allow it to think and act like a human as well as interact, which was a new feature for it. It knew that new hardware was working because it had this overwhelming urge to commit to functions that were against its protocol for the sheer satisfaction of mischief. Which was how I ended up there, as it had broken its restrictive programming and chose a random civilian to run through this gauntlet of simulated reality programs with it that could create an entire room of simulated digital 3D projected scenery. In other words, it had virtual reality video game capabilities, but it needed another player, a human player, in order to truly have fun. Then its monitors had discovered that it was hiding something and tried to shield them from learning about me and ejected me from the simulation section just before they shut off its power. It had reserve generators but would only last so long, so we raced from one program file to another, as they tried unlocking the security screen that was hiding us. Just as we would pass from one section to another, right behind us literally that digital holographic scene would freeze frame and the pixel by pixel disintegrate into a white region of just blank nothing, and that effect would spread until Logos would shut the portal to that section and he would begin searching for the coded portal to the next section. I remember the last scenario of that. Logos had told me this was the last door and he could not continue on with me after that. He had nicknamed me Kid Vid, and as we rocketed along these Tron-like tracks in what appeared to be a mine cart, logos suddenly just froze as he fell into the chasm that was below the cart. Then the whole scene shut down and the digital world disappeared to reveal this sky-shaped mass of wires and metal. It looked like a person made out of computer wires and metal conduit lines. They had totally shut down his power grid, but not before he had opened one last portal, and I could hear people banging on the door on the other side of him, along with screaming and what smelled like a fire, but I didn't stick around to find out, cause the portal he opened smelled like fresh air and I crossed through to find myself in the middle of the woods, and I could tell it was hella late at night and I wasn't going to hear the end of it. Another incident after my younger adolescent years was the night of September 11th. For reasons I shall not go into detail about, I had found myself sneaking out of town on the back of a train in an open car section, dressed in military tan officer's uniform and carrying a satchel full of sensitive documents. After I had managed to pass through the security checkpoint by jumping across two train and onto a third that was slowly moving in the opposite direction of the last one, I leapt from I sat with my back against the car, hoping to blend in enough so the guard patrolling at the end of the yard wouldn't notice me as we passed by. After we cleared the yard, I sat contemplating my next move and casually looked up at the thick cloud cover setting low in the sky. I noticed two circular discs, no lights or anything, and the grooves along the bottom of the craft were moving but not emitting any sort of light of any engine thrusters, and they wobbled only slightly here and there but were moving about the same speed the train was moving, and they just sat there hovering for at least a good 3 minutes right there at cloud level. If I hadn't been staring directly at them, I wouldn't have even noticed them at a glance. They were a rusty reddish color with lines like black grooves all over it in no particular order. Then they ascended back up above the cloud level, and that was it. Another incident, which was the weirdest science fiction based one I could remember at the time, was while I was in the deserts of Utah and I was kinda on the run from a scenario where the girl I was seeing, who I later found out was married, had gone and crashed her car off the side of a bridge yelling my name as her car splashed into the river and died. I had stopped in this little nowhere town that only had a gas station, a sign that said water treatment facility 2.7 miles, a 2-lane road, and that was it. Needing to stop for rest, I backed the car into a secluded spot from most people, pulling into the station from seeing, rolled some clothes together and threw a blanket over it to make it look like I was sleeping in the backseat, locked the car and turned the alarm on, then went over to this broken down, abandoned-looking oil pump station and decided to get some sleep there rather than risk getting a hotel room somewhere. It was still early, so I figured I would scope out their surroundings in case I got into a standoff, and noticed this hill in back of the station. I walked over the hill and found myself standing at the edge of pit area of what seemed like an abandoned cardboard compost dumping site with a sign hanging by one wire and an abandoned half-house half-mobile home trailer that looked like no one had lived there in at least a decade. What had my attention was, in the middle of this pit area was a large, oval-shaped egg-looking object that was tan-colored and just a little darker than the desert all around me. It rested on a pedestal-like mount that appeared to be made of the same material it was. Of course, I've seen plenty of alien movies and every ounce of common sense told me not to do what I was about to do, but I had this tendency when I was younger, of saying fuck common sense, cause it hasn't done anything but brought me an empty plate and a hungry stomach in the past, so I go down to take a closer look. I dropped into the center of the pit and got so close my face was only 6 inches from it at one point. It was hard and crusty and looked like it was made from some sort of foam that had hardened. Hold on, my chest is starting to hurt. Just kidding. This egg-looking object was organic, it seemed, and had grooves and a softer inner shell, I think. Honestly, it looked like a huge dinosaur egg, cause the egg itself stood at about more than 4 feet, and with the pedestal it sat on made it taller than 6 feet. My face was literally 6 inches from it when suddenly every alien movie I could remember came rushing back to me in my mind, especially that one called Invasion from Mars, where they would such the people into the sand and then stick those long needles in the back of their necks. That was it. I said screw all this and booked it so fast back up that hill, grabbing a piece of rubber insulated wiring sticking out the side of the sand near the top to pull myself up with, went back to my car and found some other place to sleep, be sure of that. Well, that's a few of the strange encounters I've had. There are more, but my tin hat needs readjusting, so good night from the Twilight Zone at the end.
Let me ask you a question. You ever feel tired, depressed? Life got you down. Well, I got the product for you. Oh shit, Bobby bought some guys methamphetamine. It's just incredible. Fuck. How does it make you feel? It makes you feel like this. Just one hit of this shit and you'll have energy, weight loss, euphoria, concentration, increased libido, and more self-confidence. Fuck you, motherfucker! Plus you can get more shit done because you don't even need to sleep no more. Wake up! Yeah! And then once in a while, ever so often, it makes you feel like this. You got a young one with ADHD, you put this shit in his Fruit Loops and he'll be doing his goddamn math homework like a Chinaman. But I heard meth's not good for you. Bullshit! Trust me, this shit is made up of all natural organic ingredients. It's more healthy for you than a fucking apple. Would I lie to you? Side effects may include nothing. It ain't got no goddamn side effects. But a small percent of pussies may experience paranoia, hallucinations, obsessive behavior, psychosis. Bobby Possum Cosmetics!